Hey podcast fam, are you a current Amazon bookseller? Are you tired of spending endless hours in thrift stores, bookstores, and libraries, book sales looking for profitable inventory? Want to source in your pajamas? KRM Wholesale offers a custom list of profitable books you can source from your computer. The items can be shipped to you, or our teams will prep and send the items into Amazon on your behalf. Take your Amazon business to the next level with no upfront charges or fees. Ready to get started? Visit kingsridgemedia.com/wholesale to get started today.
You're listening to Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem, your bi-weekly dose of true crime history in a small rural community of Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem. I'm Eric Walterkins.
I'm Gavin Schmidt.
And I'm Jason Lane.
And we're back with another bonus fun episode.
Yeah.
And Gavin's going to share us a little story he has.
Yeah.
And we're just going to, I guess, mock it. Is that? Or...
You don't have to mock it. You don't have to mock it, but I want to talk about the way that we used to do cemeteries.
Okay.
Or how we used to treat cemeteries, I guess. So I wish I had like the pictures with me because I've got like pictures of this like 8, 9, 10-year-old boy, I don't know, something like that. And he's like got his arms full of skulls because he was like digging up cemeteries. And he's like, look how proud I am.
Okay, so when
they published it
is
in the newspaper, like the 40s.
The 40s?
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah. So this is the thing, like in the Fox cities, and probably everywhere really, but in the Fox cities, like there used to be Indian graveyards, and some of them were just like Indian mounds and stuff, and then some of them were more formal because like traveling priests would come through, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're a Catholic now. We're going to put you in a Catholic hole," but they didn't mark them very well. So then, you know, a couple hundred years would go by, people come back through, and they're like, "Hey, look, it's a mound. I wonder what's in here." And so they start digging it up, and kids would like go, and the newspaper would be like, "What'd you find?" "Oh, a skull." Yeah, and like nobody thought this was weird. Like everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's what you do. You dig up Indian mounds and see what's in there." And which now, like, definitely that you cannot do that.
No, I guarded one.
Yeah. But it used to be pretty normal. And then, you know, every museum like would have their collection of Indian bones and Indian artifacts because they would send someone out and be like, "Hey, there's another mound we missed." And they'd go out there and dig it up and they'd put it in their collection. And eventually they gave most of it back. Like if they could figure out what tribe it was from, they gave it back. Some of them didn't. Lawrence University never gave theirs back. They've still got boxes of bones at Lawrence University.
Shut up.
They do. So
how is there not like some, I don't know, like group out there that's actively like going after Lawrence? Like, you need to give this back.
Maybe they don't know who to give it back to.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. Because like with when it's an actual cemetery, like what we think of as a cemetery, you know who was there. Even if there's no markings, you at least know what tribe it was. Mm-hmm. But the mounds are so old that you don't always know. Because it's the tribes that are here now maybe weren't the tribes that were here when the mounds were here. So it's harder to figure that out. But it's weird because for people who don't know, I oversee some of like the archives for the city of Kaukauna, and there's an Indian cemetery that we're not allowed to tell people about. Like,
why?
Because 8-year-old kids are going to go dig it up.
Because the last time it was public, kids went in and they started digging it up.
That's what kids do, man.
So they said, "Okay, we don't want that." Like, they took some of it, it's fine, but we don't want them to take any more of it out. So they don't tell people where it is. And there's things like this. Like, if people go onto Wikipedia and they look up like state historical sites or national historic sites, sometimes there will be things listed and then they'll say location undisclosed.
And that,
like, they know where it is, but they're not going to tell you. It's like it's a protected piece of land, but they won't tell you where the land is. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so then back in the 90s, they came through and they were laying all like the fiber optics for cable and stuff.
Oh,
and
God.
The cable guys didn't know because nobody like knew it was there except for the couple people who weren't allowed to say anything. And so they come through and they start digging their ditches to put down the fiber optics, and bones start falling out. So yeah, it's like I find that weird, like the way that the cemeteries used to be treated. Like,
so now was this just Indian burial cemeteries, or were basically any cemetery back in the 40s people were doing this crap? It's just the ones that are like unmarked.
Pretty much the Indians, yeah. I mean, there could be like French settlers. I mean, really old ones. People weren't walking into like in a St. Mary's
Riverside Cemetery or whatever and just start digging stuff.
No, that's a big no-no. But like if they don't have a name on it, it's like, oh, I can just go and dig in there, and no one's gonna do anything about it.
And my next obvious question is, so a kid goes and digs up one of these cemeteries.
Yeah. And
then gets his picture taken with the newspaper, and then with this handful of skulls, like, oh, good job, he found it.
Yeah.
Then what? Does he, like, go home and play with it for a week, and then they just throw it away, or what?
Well, in this part, I'll add the photo to the show notes so people can actually see this. But in this particular case, he turned it over to the Greeno Mansion, and those bones were in the Greeno Mansion for like decades. So you could go. You can't now. This is before our time, but you could go there, and they'd be like, "Look at our room full of bones."
Wow. So at least they were doing something with the bones and not just like throwing them away.
No. Yeah, it was weird. Like things weren't marked very good. There was another Indian cemetery on the south side of Kaukauna, and kind of like between Kaukauna and Combined Locks, and people knew kind of sort of it was there. but
is this another one that was very protected? And you know what this reminds me of?
It was not. This one was not protected.
This reminds me of when I have something really important that I don't want to lose, so I put it in a special place so that I don't lose it. And then I forget where that special place is.
And then the damn cable people.
And the fucking cable people show up.
Cut through.
And just...
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like that. So there was the one on the south side, and there were only one marked grave because the one that was marked was the white guy. And
that's terrible.
And so,
man.
And so they went through and they said, "Oh, we got to get this guy out of here." They dug him up and they reburied him in an actual cemetery. A well-marked cemetery. And then they covered it back up, and it was in a farmer's field. Well, the next generation takes over. They don't know. So the farmers come through, plowing up the land, and suddenly, like, bones start coming out.
Oh, my God!
It's like poltergeist, man.
Yeah. So it is. It is like poltergeist. I mean, there's Indian burial grounds all over the place that we either don't know are there or we know, but we can't say they're there.
So I got a question for you if you're knowledgeable about this. So I've heard that the Trestle Trail in Neenah, like, that park there, like, that there's a big hill, and I heard that that's an Indian burial ground, and that's supposed to be haunted. Like there's like hauntings that go on, like people.
Yeah. I don't know about that specifically. That they actually got in some trouble for that. Not trouble, but like there was a marker there explaining that it was called Butamore because it was that's French for Hill of the Dead.
Sure.
And they were like, there was a big battle.
Hill of the Dead. That's not menacing at all.
Yeah. They were like, this is where a battle was, and it was called Hill of the Dead because so many people were killed. They were piling up.
Yeah, dead. That's exactly what I heard. Yeah.
And not too long ago, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, they had to correct the sign because that is not where the battle was. that
So is it just a hill?
Yeah, like that why it's named that is accurate, but it did not happen in that park.
Wait a minute. It's so are there bones there?
I don't think there are bones there.
Like deep under the hill?
I mean, maybe. I guess I don't know, but where the actual Hill of the Dead is not in that park.
Where's the Hill of the Dead?
It's a couple miles away.
It's now an apartment complex, probably.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that happens all the time. There's another. I mean, they're all over the state, probably all over the country, really. And
see, and I always heard too, and I don't know how much you went to High Cliff. But there was always a hill up on top the cliff that they always said was a...
There's a bunch of them up there, actually, I think.
There's Indian mountains in High Cliff.
They're on the trail if you go through the...
yeah, like right by the campsites, there's a trail. And right along that trail, there's a hill. And I was always told that was Indian burial grounds. But I'm like... I don't know.
Yeah, there's...
like that could have just been, hey, my parents saying there's a hill there. Maybe it's an Indian burial.
No, there really are mounds there. And
so...
That became a state park, like, when people actually started caring about that. So that's part of the reason it became this... Besides the fact it's a really cool area.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, so you could protect what was there.
In the Indian maybe.
Yeah. And I don't know the details on that. I don't know if every mound there is original or if they had to rebuild some because people had dug them up. I don't know. But they are. But the Indian mounds there are real.
Yeah. Maybe that'd be cool to request in my will to be buried in a mound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like a random mound somewhere so that, 100 years from now or something, somebody's on their tractor or whatever. And
do you think that's legal? I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Gavin would know. Is it legal to just be buried wherever you want? Like, as long as
within
it's
reason, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't have to technically be in a cemetery. You can just be...
I don't know the exact laws, but I know that you can be buried on your own property, yeah.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Just bury yourself in your backyard.
I don't have property.
Fine, yeah.
Well, if you don't have property, then you can't be buried anywhere you want.
Oh.
I tell you could be buried in my backyard.
I was just gonna say. I feel like Tracy wouldn't like that.
We're not going to be buried back there. I'm not going to be living here anymore because I'll be dead too. So,
oh man.
So,
but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting topic. Like I said, these are really going to be the fun episodes. Just like we're not going to go super serious about somebody was murdered and this and that. But that's just something like I learn about because like my focus when I'm working on local history, like I don't normally do a lot of native stuff. Like that's not really a big focus of mine. But the stories come up and I'm like, what the heck? It's so weird that like, the white man moves in and he's like, well, they're not white people. I guess we can dig them up.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So you found this picture of the kid holding the bones.
Yeah. It's actually
because of the library.
It's in an archaeological report.
So whatever made you stumble upon that? Because I'm assuming you stumbled upon this picture and then you're like, God, I got to look into this further because this is just crazy.
Okay, I got to be careful how I say this because I don't want to give away where it is. So there's a trail, and they're extending the trail right now. Right now, the trail is in Little Chute, and they're extending it through Kaukauna northward. And it kind of came up because in order to widen the trail, they have to avoid this spot. Because if they widen it in that area, they're going to go back into that hole that the cable people went into. So that's how it came up because I was working with the trail people and they were like, oh, you know that we can't be digging in this. I'm like, what? I don't know anything about that. And so then there's like this archaeological report that explains why that area cannot be moved or dug in or whatever. No. And right in the middle of the report is a picture of the first time somebody went in, which is the kid holding the skull. And he's like, yeah, I got this bunch of skulls.
So, and then did you do further research into it because of that or? A
little bit, yeah. I thought it was interesting in general that there was that's more what we would call a cemetery, because that was a Catholic priest that came down and buried them. So it wasn't like an Indian mound. It was just it was a cemetery, but it wasn't marked very well. And then because it wasn't marked very well, people forgot it was there. But it's kind of cool because like the kid, like the 8, 9, 10, whatever he is, year old kid, like he actually ended up becoming an archaeologist. So,
oh, really?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So like it's weird and creepy that he's like holding all these human remains, but he was so fascinated by it that he actually went on and did that.
Yeah, did he become an archaeologist so he could keep them?
Maybe
he just got such an adrenaline rush from digging up the bones that he's like, I got to do this for the rest of my life.
I don't know. Well, the weird thing is when he became an archaeologist, he specialized in marine archaeology, which is like shipwrecks.
So
which I guess still has corpses. Yeah. So maybe that is it.
Still bones going to be down there, right?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I was trying to steer that, but you're right. Maybe he's just looking for blood.
Well, it's a cool story. Anybody else got anything for that, or?
I don't have much for cemetery stories, actually, but...
That's surprising.
I mean, we used to go all the time. Yeah. You used to go with me all the time. It's fun to walk around and creepy at night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't find cemeteries weird at all. I think people want to run or jog, walk, whatever.
I have one weird. I have one right next to my house. It's perfect. It's a figure 8, kind of.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So like if you want to walk or like run or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, back when I was actually a runner, back in my previous life when I actually exercised.
Yeah, you used to do it in a cemetery.
I did because the cemetery in Neenah, like if you say around the outer edge, it's like almost 1.5 miles exactly. So if you're looking for like a specific distance, it's easy to figure out your distance.
Well, they're beautiful. I mean, like most of the city is not kept in the way that a cemetery is. Like there's a lot of trees and like what are the mausoleums?
Yeah.
Is that what the little things are called with the one person in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are
cool.
Yeah. The architecture, everything is really cool to look at. And
oh, yeah. Oh, can I throw out one more thing about cemeteries?
Yeah, you certainly can, man.
Okay, this is totally unrelated. This is not Fox Cities related at all. But this came to me, so I want to throw this out there. It's a really cool cemetery. If you live in the Chicago area, all right? The cemetery is called Showman's Rest.
Okay.
And this is what happened is there was a major train accident like 100 years ago, and a circus train crashed.
Okay.
And like tons of people died. But the problem is most of these circus people, they all had like stage names, like Stinky the Clown or something. And most people didn't know what their actual names were because these were like people who like left their family and all this and that. So after the train accident, they made this cemetery just outside of Chicago called Showman's Rest, and they just put them all in there. So if you want to go to a cemetery where all it is like a cemetery full of like midgets and dead clowns, there you go.
Do they have like them marked with their showman names?
When they know it, yes.
Yes, yeah. But a lot of them they didn't even know.
Some of them they didn't even know.
So are they adding more people to that cemetery, or is it just like for those people that died in that accident?
It is connected to a different cemetery, but I think that part is just for the train wreck.
Sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you ever want to go to a place and just walk over the top of a bunch of dead clowns, I mean, there you go.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you enjoy this podcast, leave us a review on your favorite podcast player, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fox Cities Murder and Mayhem. Join us in 2 weeks for another exciting episode of Murder and Mayhem.